Do you know he trademarked "What Would Jesus Do"? Tyler Perry.
Oh, come on. See, did he?
I don't know. We'll have to.
Yeah,
That's what I
you're
heard. I'm gonna
throwing
check
out
that
stuff
out.
now
I'm
that
gonna check that in. We'll add that to the notes. I'll put a link in if that's the case,
well,
because that's a weird thing.
we could always use it, wait to get sued, and then.
Hey there. If you've joined the podcast today, my name is Chris Jarvis. I work with companies on employee giving and volunteering programs.
And my name's Jake McIsaac. I spend a lot of time thinking about public safety and restorative justice.
So we are having conversations here that we've been having for 20 years.
Yeah, the only difference now is we press record and share it with you.
Thanks for joining us. In today's episode, I asked Jake about the slap that was heard around the world, the altercation between Chris Rock and Will Smith at the Oscars. Basically, I'm asking my black friend, what should I think about this as a white person?
So like all great moments, do you remember where you were, what you were doing? I don't know if it's a great moment. They've talked about this slap heard around the world, Chris, from the Oscars, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you watch the show?
You know, I don't have a TV, like that old-fashioned idea from like the 80s where you watch I think they're called a network or something like that. I have streaming, so I had to pop around a little bit and get the little clips from YouTube and that kind of thing.
So you didn't witness it live?
No,
me either. Actually, I knew the show was on. Yeah, I saw it that night. How did you find out about
it? TikTok blew up.
Yeah, social media, exact same way.
Yep.
And do you remember how it was framed up when you were primed to go check it out?
No, I don't. I don't remember any of the framing or any of the, did you see this? Or, oh my gosh, can you believe it? None of that language. I didn't. All I remember is just watching a sequence that I thought, oh, Chris Rock is going to make a joke. And then there was Will Smith, and they got up and did a little bit that obviously was fake, and then went and sat down, and then, wait, that's not fake?
Well, so I think what you just described was a lot more. If that's how you found out, you had a different experience than I did. I had an Instagram feed that was kind of popping up, and there was the quote, "Will Smith just slapped the shit out of me." I think that was what Chris Rock said. Something.
Yeah, that was. Right? Yeah.
And I'm looking, and in the comments, before I could even get the clip, there was the, "Oh my God, did everyone see that? This is crazy. Best night ever." So I went to the clip already primed.
Yeah.
There was someone who already decided for me that this was egregious, that this was real, that this was over the line. And the comments fed before I could even check out what happened. But I wonder what the experience would have been like sitting there. You're watching it live. What's the sense making, right? In that moment. What do you think?
Yeah. I did see some probably bootleg video from people who are not supposed to use their phones.
God love the rule breakers.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see it from multiple angles.
Yeah.
And then the afterwards where people, well, we can talk about that in a minute. But when he comes off the stage and he's approached by,
Denzel.
Denzel, yeah,
wow.
Who I guess prayed for him with him. I guess I don't know. And then somebody, who's the other gentleman? Right away.
Wasn't that? Oh my gosh! Well, Bradley Cooper walked up to him, and there was another.
Somebody else.
Tyler Perry.
Oh yeah. I think that's who it was. Perry? I think that's exactly who it was. That would explain the little prayer between the three of them, because he's like the evangelical Christian.
Okay. So they had a prayer. I didn't know that.
A little prayer. Do you know he trademarked "What Would Jesus Do"? Tyler Perry.
Oh, come on. See, did he?
I don't know. We'll have to. That's what I heard. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to check that in. We'll add that to the notes. I'll put a link in if that's the case, because that's a weird thing.
We could always use it, wait to get sued, and then the notoriety from it can boost our
Yeah,
ratings. So like
that would help.
no
That would
downside
help.
except getting sued.
I think you just wanna make a little bit of money off T-shirts and that kind of thing. But anyway, so back to the main story.
Well, it'd be a phenomenal question actually, um, regarding this slap. Um, but so so I was thinking about, as you watch the fallout,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people suggesting, what should happen next. And I was wondering, and I'm paralleling this, like these are two folks who were at work.
Yeah,
We talk about it as a big award show, but really they're at a work event.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so when things go sideways in the work events, and it gets to this, ultimate of workplace violence and gets physical,
Mhm,
it leaves an impact in the work community that I think are some interesting parallels. Like,
mhm,
how do you respond? What do you do when you hear about the thing but you didn't witness the thing?
mhm.
Um, and and what are the contributing factors to that allowed it to happen in the first place? So maybe we could just kind of work through some of that. And maybe I just work at really toxic workplaces. Maybe that doesn't happen everywhere. I don't know. Although, fun fact for
Yeah.
listeners, there's a show last season called "What the Hell's Wrong with Chris," and I recommend you listen in case Chris tries to tell us right now that this doesn't happen where he works.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
I was about to be disparaging about your workspace.
but we
That
recorded yours
that's
last
fair.
year,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Mine's on the record. I It was interesting to watch a few of the other, colleagues, actors,
right?
who later had a range of responses from, "Yep, that's out of bounds, you don't do that," to all the way across to, "He ruined the night for everybody. I can't believe
Mhm.
he wasn't asked to leave." Apparently, I guess, again, some people are reporting he was asked to leave, and he said no because, like, getting the Oscar that night,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yep.
Um, that action devalued everybody's evening in a way because, their stomachs were not everybody, but a lot of people's stomachs were not, whereas other people were like, "Yeah, that's about right. I think we need to draw the line somewhere, and that's what happens." So,
Mhm.
okay, so obviously the difference is how you and I are seeing it based on what we're bringing to it, our own contexts, our own lived experiences, our own bodies. So, is this the point where we sort of say, "Here's my take and here are the questions," or, how do
No,
we
I think there's a space to slow down a bit for some reflection. I mean, I
Okay,
think these moments allow us to dig in beyond what happened. In just what you said, you weren't actually talking about the slap at all. You didn't
right,
talk about the incident. You
right.
talked about the impact of the incident.
Yeah.
You talked about, you know,
What the
maybe
fallout was, like
the fallout,
consequences?
maybe the motivation for it. Like we don't
Right,
know.
right.
Um,
Was it justified? Yeah,
we don't know.
yeah,
But most of our processes when we go to respond to, I now understand that the academy is doing an investigation apparently. The investigations become hyper focused on the act. What's left? What's left on the act? He slapped him.
yeah.
This is where I think we fail, and I do a lot of workplace investigation stuff too, where we
Should you just remind everybody, anybody who might be listening for the first time, what gives you any insight on this? Can you credential for the white listeners out there a little bit? Credentialing is a white culture thing where you drop all of your, "I've done this, I am this, I have this, business title, blah, blah, blah," which weirdly, I just learned is a predominantly, not only, but predominantly white culture type thing to do. Anyways, that's what the
well,
joke
and
I was making.
that'd be interesting to dig in more. Maybe we should do that some other time. I mean, I
Okay.
think if what the question is, why should anyone care what we think about this? Or right, if that's really what we're asking. I mean, I
Yeah.
spend quite a bit of time with folks who are in conflict, helping to find a way forward. So using a restorative approach to facilitating, been doing that for about 20 years. And really, it's this principle based approach to asking folks, what does justice require? And so this will come back to that question when looking at this workplace conflicts at the Oscars, but maybe that's asking people what they need in terms of just outcomes, can structure the way that you respond. So let me go back to this for a second.
Okay.
You talked about it ruining a night.
Yep. That a lot of people worked really hard for. And the person I was listening to said, you don't just win an Oscar. It is a campaign. Like you have to be, it's like winning an election, a seat at a municipal or statewide level. Like you just have to campaign, campaign, campaign. It's a full-time job. I had no idea. And so for everybody who was successful in that to have this happen, that's what that comment was referring to.
How do you get that back? So if you can't unring that bell,
Yeah.
you can't make it go away, what do you think they need?
Who's the they? The people in the audience? The
People who've been
colleagues?
the folks who've been impacted, taking those the ones you just talked about.
I don't know. If I was sitting there, I would like to know what is the protocol going forward?
Mhm.
Are there rules about what we can and can't joke about? Because Ricky Gervais would never be invited. And what happened in this situation? Like, what's the follow through in this situation, and why was that follow through the choice?
Yeah, I mean, I so in doing this work in a lot of different contexts, some with incredibly high harm,
Yeah,
could be loss of life, and there's you're working with families of folks who've lost someone,
yeah,
or it could be something relatively innocuous that doesn't seem on the surface to have a lot of harm until you start really connecting. Well, what's related and connected to this that made this so difficult?
okay,
People who have been harmed generally there's like a few buckets of impact and what their needs are, and so it's not always this, but it kind of gets you in the right direction. And this is in no particular order, but one of the things that folks need is to be heard on their experience and believed. So not to have to work hard to talk about and to justify why it was hard. So to your point, this day was taken from me. I'll never get this back.
yeah,
Right? They want someone to believe that.
okay,
They just want to be believed on their experience and heard it and be able to tell their story in what matters most. So the second bucket is just that, really want a thorough examination of all the things, not just the facts. They want it to be comprehensive and holistic. They want to know that not only are you listening to what happened, but there's an angle here to talk about what matters most about what happened. And the third one is that folks want it to matter. Like they want this to make a difference. So if I'm participating in this, if I'm participating in any kind of exercise, whether it's a restorative justice process, I want to know that this is not a waste of my time because you can't unring that bell.
what would make it not a waste of your time though? Like, because it's not going to make the feeling go away.
No,
So,
but it might help us lift the learnings if we do a deep analysis of what happened in this case. Maybe we prevent other people from ever feeling that way again. Maybe we can attend,
oh,
right?
okay, so we can find a way to avoid this ever happening again.
We can attend to whatever happened here. We could ask questions like, well, what would have helped and what would have made the difference? And sometimes it's the action of a person who caused harm. Like you can really pinpoint it on one person, but more often than not, it's about this tension between collective responsibility and individual responsibility. So now you start having what started off at the beginning of the week about, I can't believe what Will did, has quickly moved to, can you believe they allowed him to stay? Can you believe that they didn't have security uh,
Yes.
in place? Can you
Yes.
believe? And that's the nature of conflict, particularly in workplaces. It rarely ever stays between two parties, and it just starts to fan out. I don't know. Maybe you've experienced differently.
No, no, that all seems to make sense to me. So what were the 3 again? The last one was
They need it to matter.
they need it to matter.
Need to matter on the go forward.
Okay,
Right? They need to be heard on their experiences
right,
and
and
believed,
believed. Yep,
right? And they need it to be comprehensive and holistic, that you're going to be looking at what matters most, all of the interconnections, not just a slap. Because if we looked at the slap,
yeah,
who was the impacted person?
Chris Rock.
Right.
Yeah, Chris Rock. Yep,
Right? So it leaves everybody else out. if we focus so narrowly on what was the rule,
Yep.
and if the rule was that we're going after you can't assault another person, then we will miss all of the context that actually cause
I
secondary
gotcha.
harms.
I gotcha. Because the default is, look, I wasn't hit in the face, and I didn't do the hit in the face, and I wasn't insulted. So I was just an observer who feels a certain way.
Mhm.
So how important is that going forward? But you made the observation that if that's not dealt with, the it fans out, it spreads, and it affects culture uh, in a significant way going forward in terms of safety and what's appropriate and that kind of thing. And people are kind of left out of a discussion, not sure where things are going because they're not perceived as primary to it. And
Right.
you're saying, look, there's a secondary. What did you call that? Secondary?
These secondary harms, right? These ripples of harm. But if you have the other way, if you're sort of focused on taking this comprehensive approach,
Yeah,
it means that no one can let it off the hook. So in one case, in this case of the slap, the primary agency of jurisdiction, the the police department, were ready to jump in and ready to take this on, except one person said, "I'm not interested in you doing that," and then they walked away.
yeah.
Right?
You're talking about Chris Rock not wanting to press charges,
Right.
correct?
So he doesn't want to press charges so that, and I think this is right actually for a whole range of reasons, but he chooses not to use the police as the mechanism for a just outcome.
Yeah, and I should just say for everybody listening, we're recording this a couple, weeks in advance. So something may have changed there. So if you're listening going, "Hey, you two dummies, they did get involved. The police did get involved." This is of our taping, the 1st of April.
Yeah, well, April Fools. But
Hopefully,
that's
hopefully.
that's right. We don't know what the outcome will be, but we know as of
Right.
this time the police were
At
not
this point,
involved,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and that seems to be a conscious decision that he made, and
Yes.
that's a fascinating one, right? It is the who do you call, who represents safety. Um, that is a complicated decision in some circumstances. There's lots of folks who have spoke up from a place of privilege and said, whenever these things happen, you should call the police. And if you've watched any of Chris Rock's comedy, there's a lot of reasons why he said in the past that he would never call police
Right.
and
Yep.
black men
Yep.
ought not to call police.
Exactly.
So he's got a long established commentary. So if not police, then who? So what?
And you and I last season talked about
Yeah,
police are not necessarily equipped to deal with things like this. They only know here's the law that was broken and here's the punishment and here's the procedure. They're not stepping in to help resolve all the things that you just mentioned. What was the secondary harm? How do we mitigate the spread of that and deal with that so people understand the outcomes and the meaningful? They're not going to work through that. They're just going to here's the law that was broken. Here's what happens.
right.
So
It's the
in
same way
this
we do
case,
it in
I don't.
workplaces all the time.
Yeah, I don't think they would have resolved anything. I think they would have just punished.
You punish, you see what's available to you, and you
Yeah,
mete out that consequence. And then we wonder why people don't have an experience of justice. And this is what happens in workplaces where if you're not effective at exiting a person and getting rid of them completely,
yeah,
and most times HR processes don't do that,
right. Yes,
then you're stuck. You haven't resolved anything. You've created a systemic harm now. It's the thing was bad, but the response to the thing was really bad. And so it leaves people feeling either it puts you on a win-loss because someone has to be heard and someone has to be vindicated and someone has to be validated in their experience. And if it's just about the action and the rule, it doesn't go far enough to dig down. Like let's go through the layers of what could be happening there. Like if you take an intersectional approach to the slap,
okay, so now we're just sort of guessing as to some of
we're
the
just guessing.
motivation based on, yes, what we
We're
can perceive.
guessing what could be happening here.
Right,
And
which is normal, which is what anybody's gonna have to do in the workplace too. If you witness something like this, you're gonna have to make some that's where you begin the journey anyways.
yeah, well, it also is something that folks have to be paying attention to, like we talk about in restorative world, context, causes, and
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yes.
Um,
Context sorry, let's go back to that. Context?
context,
Okay, where,
Causes,
when it happened,
yeah,
what
what
was
was
the
going on,
locale, who was involved? Okay.
right? Um,
Context,
Causes.
causes. Okay, and that's where I think you're gonna take us right now in terms of intersectionality and some of the motivation that may not be apparent to other groups, who are not Black, who are not celebrities, who are not men, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and then circumstances. But let's go to causes for a
Okay.
second.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. But for me,
Mhm.
what's the difference between causes, context, and then circumstances? Because circumstances feels a bit like context. How are those two things different?
So we're paying attention to the system pieces, right?
Okay,
So the circumstances, what are those contributing factors that are environmental? What are those things that are um, most central, related, and then connected? So going out, sort of out of these, um, going to the edges to say, in a big way, what else is happening,
okay, okay.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
in this particular case, if we're looking at that using those kind of questions, I've seen a whole bunch of different commentary on this, and we'll add some to show notes.
okay.
There's one version of the story that this is black on black violence,
Yes,
right? You've probably
yeah.
seen,
Fox News, yeah,
right?
sure.
Um, and that there's hypermasculinity theme, that women are waiting to be saved by some big, powerful man, that the only way to do this with following this is physical violence. The bigger you are, the more powerful you are, you will put a smaller man in his place, and you will
Right.
do it by violence. Like, one uses words, one uses a slap.
Yep.
There's a, and then is able to offload that by saying, I was protecting women because this is my space. This is my calling in the world, is to protect women.
Now,
When the answer
on
would have
that one,
been, who?
yeah,
Who
well,
asked you?
I read 2 women who were asking, I guess, because they said it's not toxic masculinity, it is what women in the Black community
So this is the
need
next
their
layer,
men to.
right?
Okay,
So
okay,
this is the risk is, if we only take one narrative and one story, we
yeah,
lose the subtext to say, well, wait now, hypermasculinity generally,
yeah,
that would be an angle we could get behind, except for the experiences of black and brown bodied female identified folks who are disproportionately face violence, and no one seems to take that cause up.
right.
There's a strong feminist movement around that tends to advantage white women,
Yeah. Okay. And
right?
just for the listeners, a lot of you will know this, but some of you won't. The term intersectionality, developed by a woman, Kimberly Crenshaw, and may provide a little bit of info in there. She was a lawyer who was defending a woman who was facing issues with her employer, and because she was let go, and when she went to the courtroom, basically it came down to either you're defending yourself as a woman, you got let go because you're a woman, or you got let go because you're Black. And the white company was able to say, well, we have lots of women and we have lots of Black men. So pick it, you're going to lose either. And Kimberly was like, well, she's both. And the law said, nope, you can't be. Pick your identity and we'll argue on the merits of that identity that you've chosen. So she developed this idea of intersectionality, which, and Jake, I know you know all this, I'm just talking out loud, but because Jake actually introduced me to the term intersectionality. I hadn't heard it before. But one of the criticisms is white women have kind of co opted
Mhm.
the movement a little bit. And yeah, there's a lot of back and forth on that. So I just say that because it's ironic that you brought up the co opting angle here
Mhm.
when it's tied so snugly to the whole intersectionality piece,
Well,
anyways.
well, well. This. I mean, this is part of it, and we could go on and keep cutting through.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of what was said
Hmm.
was about. I have read a lot about a few themes about other folks who feel unheard, unseen in these kind of conversations, and those are folks who are on a spectrum of accessibility needs. And so, why was it so easy to make a joke about a medical condition? Like, why was that fair game? So, really going against the other side of, it's not about the slap, It's about what was said, and it was, why is that okay? And so there's
Yeah, and on that one, there has been a lot of conversation over the past decades about censoring comedy. It
Mhm.
is an insane idea. Like, you just
So what if, so these, it gets really complex if you start
yeah,
going
yeah,
that deep, and we should be down for, if you're doing a thorough examination, you should be turning your mind, if you're doing a workplace investigation, if you're a person who's responsible to do that, or if you're just the person who heard about what happened in the lunchroom and said, "Did you hear that Jake slapped Chris in the parking lot last week?" There are another set of questions that you could ask to say, "I wonder what was going on.
mhm,
Wonder what happened," versus
mhm.
just tell the story of the act. Because when we only do that and we focus in too sharply on that, we're going to lose all the back stuff. So, what if then the restorative way out of this was to just start to try and examine how we structure relationships with each other, given all of that context, not trying to mitigate it, but understanding that all of those things can be true in that slap, every bit of it.
Okay, so just rehearse, what are all the things that could be true? And then I wanna go back to you
There
just
could
made
be
a
there could be themes of hypermasculinity.
yep,
There could be themes of black on black violence. There could be themes on what's required in terms of helping black female identified voices be heard and be seen the same in some of the same ways. Um, Folks with accessibility needs who are facing barriers that don't allow them to be showing up, or any showing up in any way that's significant other than a punchline. And then, as you just talked about, but what about my freedoms of expression? Well, I get to say whatever I want. Why are you trying to rein me
now,
in?
see, that seems like a philosophical topic versus an identity-related topic.
Well,
The
that
other 4 were
those
identity,
those are
this one
identity, but this one
yeah,
ties into, at the root of much comedy that is celebrated as edgy,
yeah.
is that when we get to take an identity swing, when we cut it really close to, this is, the thing that you're not supposed to say.
Well, because, much of comedy is laughing at ourselves for the ridiculous stereotypes that we all talk about in our head that we know aren't true, but we still do them anyways. It's a bizarre thing.
So I think that's it. You've got all the individual liberty to laugh at yourself.
Okay.
But you are in risky territory when you start to make fun and have other people laugh. You create an out group with just one comment. The people who are laughing,
So you're not a big roast fan.
I'm not a big roast fan because no, because I think they intentionally set up an in group, out group dynamic in real time. And then you watch people squirm. What they're squirming about is not typically what was said, but by being outed in front of that group immediately in that moment. And
Mhm.
you can see that dynamic playing out, even if it's just brief, and they find a way to bring them back in. There is an out group moment that they experience, and I don't love it.
Okay.
But that's,
So
we're all over the
and we
place. Yeah.
won't make a judgment call on that. Yeah. I do want to go back. You went by it really quickly. The gossip piece. I Somebody's looking out the window in the parking lot. You and I work at the
Mhm.
building. You walk up and just slap the crap out of me, and I'm shocked,
I've
and I get in the
dreamed
car and
about
drive
this
away, and you
moment.
drive away. Yeah. And someone's watching
And
through the window.
everyone else that realized worth, I got you.
And immediately, gossip serves a bunch of different functions, but one of them, it's not all
No.
bad. Gossip is part of our sense making, where we talk about what did that mean. We're trying to bring to the experience, and the rational discourse with our in group at work is likely the right place to do that. Now, gossip can also be an othering
Mhm.
conversation whereby we take a group that we already know we don't like, but we're all going along with this anyways. But oh my gosh, Jacob just slapped the crap out of Chris Jarvis. Now I don't want to say anything about anything, but I think that's just a cultural thing where they hit each other more.
They?
Jacob. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. That gossip turns to an othering type of gossip where I differentiate myself from the other person. So I've already made sense of it, meaning not my issue, their issue. And now I'm othering. So gossip, and then there's one more. It doesn't matter about that, but gossip can like talking about it with your colleagues can be a good way to go. And you're saying
Oh, I think you have to talk about it.
it's probably
Yeah,
appropriate,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
To discuss it.
I think you
Yeah.
have to, but there's, if, particularly in the workplace, I think if
Yeah.
you're, people are going to talk anyway. The leadership moment is to create the conditions for those conversations. So don't let it just go. Really lean in, especially if you're an HR person or if you're an investigator. There's ways to have those conversations that don't burn the house down. And so recognizing that if people need to talk about something, probably the best way to have that rational discourse is to have them talk to each other in a facilitated way. This is why we do briefs and debriefs. We help people see each
Yeah.
other and share their experience from different perspectives. And we go around and we ask people to comment on the thing that is so obvious in front of them. But every time we do a debrief at the end of a volunteer experience, it's shocking that just the same set of circumstances, everyone experienced the same thing, but the takeaways are so individualized.
Oh,
So
wildly different.
so in a
Yeah. Yeah.
facilitated space, it is the same dynamic when you're doing an investigation, whether it's been an experience, a learning experience, or something that's been harmful that you're trying to leverage the learning. It's essentially the same process. Bring folks together, let them hear from each other, pull the themes out because they will recognize as they're listening to each other, um, they're making connections and building understanding. And it's more of an iterative process because the more you do it in these structured ways, people will then start to understand different layers than just the slap.
Okay. So instead of HR or the boss looking and saying, that was a crossing the line.
Mm-hmm.
We need to strengthen the line
Mm-hmm.
and we need to make sure it's never crossed again. So that means we're going to punish, we're going to separate, we're going to deal with, we're going to make it public, we're going to warn everybody else. That's not what you're recommending here necessarily. You're recommending the first step is trying to understand who was affected, how that played out, what was that effect like in their lives,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that, and then also understanding what the larger group, not just the two individuals, you and me in the parking lot, what the larger group needs
Yeah.
from this process.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the last piece was what was the last one that you?
Needs it to matter.
Yeah, I need to know it matters. I need to be heard.
Heard on their experience and needs it to
Yep.
be comprehensive and holistic. It needs to be cutting
Great.
across everything, right?
Right.
Thorough.
Right. So in that process, HR is going to go, all right, well, this is going to spill all over the place
Right.
because it's not just going to be the slap. I'm going to have to deal with a whole bunch of things. I don't want to deal with that. I want to corner this, put it away, deal with it, and move forward because we have to make money.
You nailed it. But it
Yeah.
will come back. So this is a constant conversation that I have with folks who will engage me to do this work within their organizations. I will say, at some point, you and I are going to have a conversation about scope. You're going to say, "Hey, Jake, I asked you to come in and look at this. And now we're over here.
Yeah,
And you were asked to
exactly.
come look at this."
Yeah.
So this has happened
You're making more problems than
over
we
and
had
over and
before.
over. So now I just am honest and explicit about it.
Yeah.
That you don't have to deal with everything. I will help you see that everything is connected, that all of these things are connected. And
Okay.
so a restorative approach might take care of one piece of it, but likely at the end of a good process, you'll have a roadmap to say, and what else are you going to be taking care of as you attend to this? If you're actually building the community where the folks are coming together to talk about it, they will take on these other pieces. It won't be the outside investigator. You will have empowered people to see each other, talk about it in a way that allows everyone to be heard. It is problem solving and forward focused, and they're going to continue to use that process. You're building inherently in responding restoratively. You're building capacity to keep doing this on the everyday. So it's the leave behind, and that's usually when folks are like, "Well, okay, I'll do that then." Like this is both response and education and learning about culture.
So let's pretend Chris Rock, you're HR
Mhm.
lead, and or you're brought in by HR,
Yep.
and Chris Rock is
To the academy, I am available.
yeah. There you go. There you go. I'm actually. I think they already
I
probably
think they've
reached out.
asked. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's buried in my junk mail.
It's actually
Sorry.
probably true. Oh my gosh, so many good conversations buried in the junk mail
Mhm.
or spam file. So you're being brought in from the outside.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's your goal? Like, what can you go right to the end of you've gone through all of the things that we've been talking about? What happens at the end? How do you know? All right, we've dealt with this.
So one of the first questions that I would ask, is this possible here? Do you have willing participants? Because the one thing I was going to interrupt, but I didn't because I figured we'd have a chance to say it, is there's a bit of a decision point made by the folks who care. So, or who have a responsibility to care. One of the first tensions are, is this safe? That's a really, really good question. Like, is it likely to happen again? So if I were doing this, I would be checking in with the person about their willingness um, to participate in a process that would hold them
Okay.
accountable in this way. If not,
Okay.
we probably, if there's safety concerns, it might result in some hybrid approach, which says, it's actually not safe for you to be here, dude. Like, you may not be able to come back next year to the Oscars because we can't trust that you're not going to do it again. You're not doing your learning, you're not doing reflection, you're not willing to hear from other folks about the impact and then start the reparative work. Like, if those ingredients aren't there, you probably don't have much runway to work with the person who caused harm.
Okay.
That said,
Yeah.
even if you take a punitive approach there, you would do well to be paying attention to the other folks because, again, you're only going to deal with the slap. So
Right.
generally, you'll have to do both. Not generally, sometimes you'll have to do both. But when properly explained that this is a process whereby the person can find their path back into community, not not easily, but it's one that is guided, it's one that is principled. If you, it is this path toward rehabilitation. If you want to come back and journey with us and keep going in this direction, keep working here, I think we can find some runway to help you do that. And
Okay.
so people generally, so I guess if you had those ingredients, if you had a willing person, you would follow the process to say in those circles, what is the most directly, so if I were sketching this out, I would say there's probably a conversation between Will and Chris and Jada. That's a facilitated conversation
Yeah, that now
privately, right?
that's the core
There's the
when I think
core.
of the work you do, you bring people together to discuss
Right.
face to face what happened, why, how they
Mhm.
were all affected, what it and map out a plan going forward.
Right. So that would be the first
And
part.
that's the restorative. Right. Right now, just for everybody, as of again the day of the recording, Will Smith has rescinded his membership.
Mhm.
He's like, "Peace out. Yep, I'm done."
You can't
Like
fire
there's
me.
this,
I quit.
yeah, you can't fire me. I quit. I'm
I've
out of
done
here.
that though.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
avoidance, right? I mean, I've done that. Lots of people
But
do.
let's say, and I think that's a gut reaction. It's like, okay, if nobody can accept it or understand it, I wasn't in the wrong. I'm out of here. But let's assume he said, you know what? It wasn't my best moment. I want to work forward. But to be fair, he had it coming. So that's where his head is at. And you would bring them together, all three of them, to have a conversation. You've already had a conversation with the members, other members at the company or the academy to help you understand how they were affected, what they want to see coming out of it. And you've demonstrated a comprehensive approach, not just dealing with the slap, but also all the conditions, circumstances, and
Yep.
contexts that went into creating that moment in the first place.
Right. But I would bring them together in different groupings, right? So I would,
Obviously,
right?
yeah, yeah. The work
So
plan is
there'd
probably
be a
detailed.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall they would be growing out from the what is most central to those things that are related and connected as you work through your process design.
So next year, it's resolved. You fixed it. What does that fix look like? Is it the three of them standing up on the stage next year and saying, "We're going to begin this year by having," or a special taped thing or something? But this incident, you all know it, slap that was heard around the world. We just want to talk about what happened, why it happened, and where we are now, and how we're working through it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the end that you desire from this?
Oftentimes in processes there is a reporting back of some sort. The what have we learned? The lessons, right? This leads to
Yeah, because it's
the what matters.
everybody else there.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you make it matter? You tell the story of the journey of the lessons you've learned. I didn't think this
Okay,
in the beginning of the process, but
great.
as what I've come to learn and come to understand through dialogue, connecting with other folks is this.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there are statements, sometimes written statements, written reports. Other times there's an acknowledgement in a process where people are just doing that in the very, very private ones.
Okay.
right? That
Yeah.
there are just
That
some
didn't
things that
like
don't get
take
public.
place in front of 20 million people.
But
Yeah.
you might imagine that the kind of lessons and learning that the three parties most central, they will have things that they only need to say to each other, and no one else has a right to that. Just because you
I
witnessed it doesn't give you
yeah.
access to that.
And you may not know everything that's going on. Like you
Right.
didn't hear what was said at the barbecue that Chris Rock was at the other day,
Right.
you know,
Right.
where they were all there. Exactly.
Like Jada
Okay,
used to
so
hang
let's
out with Tupac. To be clear, like there's probably conversations that would be
yeah.
really, really interesting,
Yeah.
that are only for folks who are in that, that world.
Well, it's interesting because Will Smith can do this work. I've seen him with his wife on TV talking about their relationship, very private stuff that was publicly
Mhm.
splayed all over the place.
Mhm.
And they
Spill that
have you
tea,
seen?
buddy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well, that's
Because
interesting,
he
right?
knows everybody's, like, weirdly affected, and this brings us even though it's personal, I feel bad for celebrities this way, but this brings us to, in the workplace, I see this happen out the window. You're recommending kind of 3 responses here. First of all, I have to ask myself, am I affected? Well, yeah, I watched it and my stomach flipped and I feel weird and I don't know if I feel safe or I don't know what's going on, but these are my colleagues, and so, yeah, even though I didn't get hit, I am affected. Check. That
Yeah,
feels
that's
legit.
yep.
Okay, second, am I responsible to understand and respond? So that level can be different depending on where I'm at. If I'm a leader,
Right.
I heard this phrase the other day, Jake. We have to do a whole show about this. Leaders are identity architects.
Yeah, I agree.
We tend to think of them as visionaries, cast the vision, this is the direction, and make everybody go that direction. But a real leader is somebody who can call out of you the best of you in a way that allows you to feel fulfilled, to be performing, to be a team player, to think about who you are, where you are, your contributions, but it's a more identity thing. So again, we're not going to get into that.
Identity
But
architects.
identity architect. So if I'm a leader, if I'm the manager of this
Yeah.
building,
Yep.
yeah, of this department, I would look at it and say, okay, I need to, first of all, understand, not respond. I need to take the steps to understand, do the 3 things: who was affected, what was the extent of how they were affected, or how do I make this comprehensive so they feel like we're covering everything? And then the third part, which is, some sort of response to resolve and
Yeah.
move forward a plan. So, but if I'm not the boss, I still am kind of responsible to understand what happened and respond as a colleague. Is that what we're saying here? There probably is a role for me to proactively play if I want to be
Yeah.
promoting
No,
an
I
inclusiveness.
think that is, you just nailed it. I think that we talk a lot about equity and diversity, but the how is all in being inclusive. Like that's where you're setting the culture. That's where you're trying to actively make sure people are included. And
Right.
there's no better way to practice. So put your values proposition is, when in conflict, how do you act? Do you act in
Yeah.
inclusive ways, or do you act in ways that exclude? And cut off the
And even when I'm
conversations.
seeing it
Right.
in my context, how do I act? Yeah. Okay.
So if you cut people off, if you don't allow them to be heard, if you're making decisions that aren't inclusive all the way through to the end of, the way you investigate, the way you make a decision, the way you tell the story, if you're not including other voices, then it's really narrowing the range of options that you have for response.
And then finally, what are the cultural contexts or the systems in which we're both are? Like, let's say I work at
Mhm.
company X kind of thing, where this may occur or be occurring, and I just haven't seen it. So again, we tend to think of that as a leader thing, but as a colleague, maybe I begin to think, okay, that happened in the parking lot, but it didn't come out of nowhere. And I'm
Right.
wondering if is this place a place where that kind of reaction is encouraged or permitted? Like what are we doing here that played out? And so now
Right.
I'm not thinking about the 2 people in the parking lot. I'm thinking about sort of a systemic contributor
Nailed
as
it.
well. And that's part of the response.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not responsible, I'm not their boss, but I should think about that. If I want to be truly inclusive with a diverse and equitable workplace, this is important, should be important to all of us.
This is the work that we actually hope the academy is doing, right? This is not
Yeah.
just, it is easy to just dispatch this a conflict off to be about these two parties. and it's
And
just
who's right,
it's
who's wrong, for why.
interpersonal. It's got to be
Yeah.
about those folks.
Yeah.
The real pivot is when we start to say, so what does this say about us? What do we need to learn?
Ooh,
Where's the
what does this say
what
about
does this
us?
say about us? Who are we in this moment? Right. So these are some of the restorative questions that we would ask about culture and climate
That's
to
good.
say,
Yeah.
okay, so that happened. How do you want it to be different? What do you want
Yeah.
to what would you like to see differently? If this isn't a defining moment for you, where is the runway to create a defining moment? If it is it a moment where so this will be the interesting work next year. Whether Will comes to the Oscars or not, the interesting work will be, what has the Academy done? What are they thinking about? Where's the shift?
Did we
That's the
just make
moment.
a new rule?
Do we make a
Or
new rule, or was it that we hire more security? Right. So
yeah.
it's don't take the easy outs, because generally they will be so obvious. If you, of course, you may have to do some of those things, but they can't be
Yeah.
the only things that you do.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's great.
Right.
What is this? And I think that's a great question.
What does it say
What
about
does this
us?
say about us? What does this say about me?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Okay, thanks for walking me through that. I feel way better informed now that I've talked to my black friend about.
And we're canceled again. Well, it's been fun, folks.
Yep,
Here
that was a good
go.
one.
Yeah.
See you next time.
It's good.
Maybe.
This
has been
a Podstarter
production.